Alright, looks like we are live on YouTube, Facebook, and Zoom. Check a couple of things. All right, good morning, everybody. I'm glad to be here. We've got some amazing panelists with us tonight, but what we will be discussing is the wonderful world of pre-foreclosures. So for those of y'all that have never invested in pre-foreclosures, or you have and you're looking to touch up on some of your information, this should be the show for you tonight. We're going to do this in a short mini-series. We're going to break this down probably into 2-hour segments, spanning across probably 4 different shows. But this first show is going to be touching base on essentially what a foreclosure is, how the process works, and the type of documents that you should be looking at to try and source and pull off your own pre-foreclosure deals. So I'd like to give all of our panelists an opportunity to introduce themselves, give themselves a little bit of background on who they are and why they're here today. So for us, let's just start from the left to right. I'm Daniel Moore. I've been doing in real estate investing since about 2006, 2007. I've kind of moved through most different asset classes and acquisition disposition strategies, ranging across multiple different things. All of that to be said, I find real estate to be a very strong vehicle for retirement, and it really does provide opportunities that are unlike those that you would often find in your traditional education systems. So I'm trying to expose these types of powers to other people and allow them to kind of enjoy in some of the things that I've been able to do inside of my own life. So I'm the co-founder of Propelio.com, and above and beyond that, I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic on over to Chris Monroe. How you doing, man?
Hello, everybody. My name is Chris Monroe. I'm residing here in St. Louis, Missouri. I specialize in creative real estate such as owner finance, wraparound mortgages, lease options, stuff like that. The stuff that most people should stay away from or feel like they should stay away from. I'm here today to try to help out and provide value wherever and help with the comments and things like that.
Awesome. I guess up next would be Mr. Brady Durr. How you doing?
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Brady. I started on real estate as a next strategy to retire from 4% in about 2016. Started off in non-performing boots in Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, and now subsequently I like the acquisition, the substitute with the wrap model and the DFW market. I started focusing. And Propelio has been an integral part of my learning process to make less mistakes.
Awesome. So, Taryn, I got you up here. Let's get a little bit of background on you.
Yeah, so my name's Taryn Ward. I am based in the South Florida market. I've been doing real estate since about 2014. I specialize in pre-foreclosures. Don't know why that happened. I specialize in pre-foreclosures. I do a lot of short sales. I run the Facebook group with Alyssa, Women Wholesaling Houses, and we have a group of over 24,000 women nationwide. And we do meetings right now virtually, but otherwise in 10 different cities. And I'm looking forward to sharing with you guys today.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I'm getting a little bit of feedback from the users that the audio is having some issues. So let me try and work through that here in just a second. But Liana, if you don't mind, go ahead and hop on there and go through.
Sounds
and
good.
Let's see if we're able to get this figured out.
All right. So I'm Liana. I reside in British Columbia, Canada. So I do everything virtually in the United States. Been real estate investing for about a year, so I'm definitely the new kid on the block on this panel, but I'm just looking forward to be learning from you guys and share a little bit of experience that I've had doing things virtually. So I appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Let me see if I can get some feedback from the audience real quick. So I've got a lot of people here on Facebook that are telling me that the audio is bad. Can I have anybody that's over there on Facebook confirm for me whether or not they can hear me okay or not? Can you hear me, Facebook? All right. How's the sound over there? Everybody over there on Facebook, how's the sound over there? YouTube, for anybody watching on YouTube right now, I've got 32 people waiting on YouTube. Can you hear me on YouTube okay? All right. So we've got quite a few people across these channels that are trying to come in. Let me make sure I've got good audio for you. All right. So I've got, okay, so everybody on Facebook is saying, or excuse me, everybody on YouTube is saying my audio is good. Facebook is saying good for my audio. So it sounds like they can hear my audio okay, but the Zoom people, I'm not sure if y'all can hear the Zoom people a little bit. Okay.
The Zoom people are reporting that their audio sounds fine.
Okay. All
Microphone
right.
check. 1 2 1 2.
All right. So let's see if we can hear Chris.
Can you hear me now? How does it sound? Can you?
I think everybody can. Okay. All right. For whatever reason, I think we just had a bad strip of audio, but I think we're good to go now. So I guess I'm going to just go ahead and start kicking this class off for everybody that's out there watching right now. We're going to dive in on this. And for the panelists, if you got something that y'all would like to add into the conversation, I'd love to hear y'all's input. We've got a lot of experience on the panel and a lot of varying people across the United States. We've got Missouri here. We've got Canada here. We've got the Southeast here with the Florida market. And we've got Texas represented well as well. So for all of us on here, let's get this kicked off. Let's have some fun. So we will be teaching about pre-foreclosures today. And what I would like to do is let's jump in. Let's have some fun. Like, why not? Let's just do this. So let me see here. What's this here? So we got the pre-foreclosure class coming up here. Let me find where my good old-fashioned. So through this class, I'm going to be discussing, some of the key things, like why you should be doing this, what you're going to be learning in this class, and how it's going to benefit you. But some of the primary reasons why I personally moved into pre-foreclosures myself was because it was a very simple list to understand. It's like these people are about to have their property sold at auction if they don't do something. So the motivation is fairly well established right off the front. And then with that motivation being established, it's public record. So it's a relatively simple list to acquire. And then once you've acquired it, then it gets more challenging because from there you now have to acquire some way of reaching out to these homeowners and then helping them through this process. So why foreclosures? According to Realty Track in 2018, there was close to 570,000 homes in some stage of foreclosure in the United States. So that sounds like 570,000 homeowners that could likely use some level of help with understanding the situation that they're in and possibly being in a situation where they might want to sell their homes. And with that to be said, foreclosure filings have been trending at around 25,000 per month as of 2019. That was last year. So with those two stats, like if you're in a major metropolitan area or even if you're in a rural area, foreclosures are going to happen. Foreclosures are going to happen every single year, no matter what. It's going to happen. So if you are aware of how to navigate the foreclosure process, well, then you're going to be set up in such a way to really take and add this to your tool belt. Because when you do get a foreclosure filing that does come in on your phone calls, you're going to need to know how to navigate it. It's a little bit different than your average phone call, and there's key things that you're going to need to know and understand about that call to make sure that not only you're doing right in your own business, but you're doing right by the seller. When you're doing these types of leads, you need to make sure that you have the seller's best interest at heart when you're navigating through these types of leads. So through this class, what I expect for y'all to learn is, what we're going to be looking at people that are in late payments, how to work with those, people that are already in the default section, whether it be a list pending or a public notice of default, people when they're in auctions. We're not going to be talking about auctions, and we're not going to be talking about REOs. So what I don't want you to be doing is spending the next couple hours on this call thinking I'm going to teach you how to buy properties at auction. That is not what we're going to be doing here. I'm also not going to be teaching you about REOs, but I will be talking about people that are behind on their payments, as well as people that have already received a notice of default / list pending. Those are the types of people that we're going to be talking about in this class. So if you were here for REOs or auctions, we won't be talking about those two. All right. Now, what will we learn? What the foreclosure cycle is, how to connect with foreclosure sellers, how to negotiate and qualify a lead, what paperwork is needed at the appointment, how to get a foreclosure stopped, and getting the deal closed and funded. So moving forward from there, you're going to need to know that by no means, none at all, are foreclosures absolutely universal across the United States. Every single state will have its own unique process. It will have its own specific ways of handling things. And before you go out and start trying to do any of this type of stuff in your own local market, you're going to need to research your own laws. That is, there's several resources out there. Like, I don't remember the exact name of it, but there's a website out there that's something around legal advice. And it really does a good job of outlining every single state's essential judicial or non-judicial foreclosure process and kind of helps you through what those things look like. So you do need to research. You definitely need to research your local state. I'm going to keep moving forward from here. I'm going to try to keep this moving kind of fast because I really want to get into the nuts and bolts of what we got going on here. So if there's anything that wants to be popped in, feel free to pop in.
And Daniel, I guess you're talking about nolo.com, that site that breaks it all down?
That's the one I was thinking about, nolo.com. I appreciate you bringing that up. Like, nolo.com is a great resource for anybody to get the general understanding of how their state's laws work. Like, what is the required notice periods? What are the redemptions? How is the auction performed? Is it done at the local courthouse? Is it done on the county clerk's public steps? When are they done? Those types of things you can find out pretty quick from nolo.com, and there's several other resources out there similar to like that I think could be really, really good for you to kind of get that initial understanding of your state laws taken care of. But the primary thing I want y'all to understand is no matter how much time I spend on a webinar like this trying to teach you, there's nothing that I'm going to be able to teach you about your specific state. You're going to need to go out and figure out exactly how your state works, and there's nobody that can do that for you but you. So make sure you do that. All right, and I think while I'm on that same subject, some states do have some rather significant laws regarding about how you can approach somebody that is in pre-foreclosure status. I believe Oregon, you have to be licensed to talk to somebody that's in pre-foreclosure. I believe it's the same for Colorado. I don't want to quote that, and Ohio might also be that way. So you do need to make sure you understand how your state laws work. Okay, so moving forward from there, why isn't everyone doing this? Like, some of the key things I see is fear. When somebody doesn't understand how something works, fear gets involved. And when that fear gets involved, it stops you from taking action and moving forward. My hopes is by the end of this mini-series, you have a much stronger understanding of how this foreclosure process works, how you as an investor can provide value to a homeowner, and how you can actually start taking advantage of some of these leads that are coming in that you otherwise would not know how to perform on. So there's a lot to go on here. Okay? So let's take a look, and we're going to start discussing what the foreclosure process looks like, because I've heard a lot of people that are not familiar with this really get just not the facts straight. I mean, like, they're still under the impression that the bank owns the property. It's like, well, can the seller sell me the house that's in pre-foreclosure? Well, yeah, the seller can definitely sell you the house. They still own it. The bank, just because the bank's moving forward with foreclosure proceedings doesn't mean that the bank has any rights to the property that weren't there prior to the foreclosure proceedings starting. So yes, you do have the ability to purchase properties when they're in pre-foreclosure. Taryn, does that change on a judicial state? Like, once the courts get involved, do they have to approve a sale, or how's that work?
So it doesn't change. The owner is on title until the sale goes through. So once the certificate of title passes and the bank changes the deed into the bank's name, then the bank owns it. And one of the things you'll find is that the banks will take over a property, like property preservation companies will come in. They're securing the asset, but they actually don't have a legal right to do so.
Okay. All right. Cool stuff. So there we go. So yeah, 110%. So let's go through. Let's take a look at this. All right. So understanding the pre-foreclosure process. When somebody, essentially, think about it from your standpoint, because the banks do in some ways get a bad rap for this. If you loan somebody a significant amount of money and they stop paying you back, wouldn't you want to get your money back, or at least the collateral that they pledged against your money? It's like, okay, I just loaned you $300,000 to buy a house. You haven't paid me for the last 8 months. It's time for me to take this house back. I think everybody could agree that seems legitimate. Now, the banks do get a bad rap for this in some ways, because you know what? Sometimes you'll call the bank up and be like, well, can I make some partial payments? Can I do this? Can I do that? you have to understand when you're dealing with some of these big banks, their ability to work deals with you is almost nullified by regulations. There's going to be a lot of things that's going to be regulated, like, okay, if I do take a partial payment from you, well, then the clock starts over again. Or if I do this or I do that, then it really turns into a situation that they really can't be in. So I don't really want to turn this into a bash in the bank type of thing, but ultimately the goal for a foreclosure is they want to get the property back because they need to get their money back out of the property and moving along the lines of doing business. So the process for the foreclosure is fairly simple. You know, borrower defaults on the debt in some form or fashion. From there, the bank proceeds with due process or judicial proceedings. We'll talk more about that as we go through the class, but the states are fairly well divided up into states that move through and you can foreclose on a property without involving the courts. And there are other states where you have to have a court's involvement to get a foreclosure done. So depending upon your state, and some states actually do both, depending upon, you know, the type of recorded documents that they have. But the bank moves forward with either due process or judicial proceedings, and then from there, the property is sold at auction to the highest bidder. Now, how does that look? Like whenever the bank takes a property to the auction, there's going to be an opening bid at the auction. That opening bid in a non-judicial state is brought in by the trustee. There's a trustee that takes the property to the auction, and let's say they're going to open the bid at $100,000. That opening bid is the bank's bid. The bank says, we're going to start the auction at $100,000. If nobody outbids me, then who wins the property back? The bank. And then once the property is taken back by the bank, it now becomes an REO. So for all those things taken into consideration, the opening bid starts at the bank, and then if somebody outbids the bank, they are now going to be the new owner of the property through a trustee's deed or something similar to that. Okay? So property sold at the auction to the highest bidder, and from there, if no bidders, then the lender purchases the property and it becomes an REO. Only at that point in time does the bank actually own the property. At no point in time prior to the close of that auction does the bank own that property at all. The only thing that the bank has is some sort of lien against that property that says that money is owed to them, and it gives them some sort of security instrument to move forward with and foreclose on this property. So don't think that the bank owns the property at any point in time until after the gavel hits or whatever, the auction gets closed. That is the point in time that the bank either owns the property if they didn't get outbid, and if they did get outbid, then the new investor is the new homeowner of that property. Does that make sense, everybody? I'm kind of talking fast because I'm trying to get through some of the basics so we can get into the more of the nuts and bolts of this process. If anybody sees any questions pop up, feel free to bring them up if they are pertinent to the current conversation. Whew, I need to breathe. I'm nervous. I'm really nervous here.
You got this, Daniel. You got this. We believe in you.
We'll figure this out. I don't know why I'm so nervous right now. Like, I've done these lives now for close to 2 years, but I'm really nervous right now. I've never done Zoom. I think it's because I'm doing Zoom. Zoom's got me thrown for a loop right now. So let's get this going. All right, next one. What if the seller owes the lender $30,000? Let's put this into the back of your mind. I own this house and I owe the bank $30,000. Okay? And what if it goes to the auction, and after it goes to the auction, it starts bidding up, and it sells for $75,000. So I owe the bank $30,000, but it goes to auction and sells for $75,000. A lot of people have the misconception and think, well, the banks are loving this. You know, the bank's about to make a ton of money, man. All they're owed is $30,000. This goes to auction, and the bank just sold it for $75,000. The bank just made an extra $45,000. Well, let's break this down for you and let you see how this looks, because that's not the case. You know, ultimately, we're going to have a distribution of proceeds. First thing that's going to come out of that $75,000 are the attorney fees associated with the cost of the foreclosure. We're going to come through, pay off any of the debt of the senior, I probably need to throw a number 2 in there. That's going to be taxes. Any taxes that are owed are going to get paid out of that first. Any attorney fees are going to come out second. And then they're going to pay off the debt of the senior lien. That would be the $30,000. They're going to pay off any remaining proceeds to junior liens, second positions, third positions. We'll talk more about that as we progress through this class, the lien positions and how they work. And then anything beyond that, if there's insufficient funds to pay off all of the liens, there will end up being potentially deficiency judgments against the seller. The banks do have the rights to file for deficiency judgments against the seller, but at the end of the day, once all liens are satisfied, any remaining balance is paid back to the original owner. So with that taken into consideration, if I owe the bank $30,000 and it goes to the auction, it sells for $75,000, the taxes are going to get paid, the attorneys are going to get paid, anybody that has liens on the property will get paid. But at the end of the day, if there's an overage, the homeowner is going to receive that overage. That overage does not go back to the bank. The bank did not make a profit. The only purpose for this property being sold at auction was for the lien holders to receive the money back that was owed to them. So the banks aren't going out here trying to get tricky with a bunch of homeowners and foreclose on thousands and thousands and thousands of homes to make a profit. I would be willing to bet, I don't have any statistics to back this up, but I'd be willing to bet that the banks almost unanimously, 9 times out of 10, if not probably 99 times out of 100, lose money on every property that they take back into the foreclosure loop. The banks don't really benefit by doing the foreclosure. The only purpose to the foreclosure is for them to get the asset back so they can recover the capital that they invested on the loan. That is the sole purpose of the foreclosure process. Okay, so moving this forward, other considerations. Foreclosing is not the bank's goal when lending. The property condition is unknown whenever they go to foreclose on this. They don't really know what the condition of that asset is. It could be in better condition than when they loaned on it, or it could be in worse condition than when they loaned on it. They might be lucky to get a BPO in there, but it's not probable. Affects their ability to lend. If they do foreclose on this property, that's now transfers from an asset on their books over to a liability, and it does affect their lending power whenever they're audited. Owning a vacant property is a liability for the bank. They've got this property that's sitting vacant. It could be getting vandalized. The asset value could be decreasing. They do have the risk of people getting hurt on the property. They have their own insurance. They have all this type of stuff. But it's not something the bank wants. The bank's not in the business of owning real estate. Moving forward from there, what if it's not vacant? What if they do foreclose on it? Now they've got squatters. They've got people living in the house. They've got all these other things. This is a headache for the bank. The goal for the bank is not to foreclose on the property. Why do I think this is important to the conversation? Because we're going to be talking to banks. We're going to be calling banks, and we're going to be speaking with these banks, and we're going to say, hey, I've got a homeowner here that is behind on their payments. And their goal is to make sure that you get taken care of so you don't have to foreclose on the property. And a lot of people come into this with the mindset that the banks are wanting to foreclose. Well, if you come into it with that mindset, it's going to kind of hurt your negotiations with the bank. You've got to realize and understand the bank's goal is not to foreclose on this property. The bank's goal is to have a performing note and or that lien paid off. They want one of those two things. And if you're able to make one of those two things happen for them, there's a reasonable chance that you're going to be able to negotiate with that bank and get what you need out of it. So keep these things in mind. Some of these key things, because I'll use these exact same statements whenever I'm negotiating with the bank at times. If I do get on the phone with the bank and the bank's not wanting to do something with me, I'll start talking to them about some of these types of things to try and get this process moving forward. Okay? So what if it's not vacant? REO costs exceed what may be apparent. They're going to have to insure it, they're going to have to maintain it, they're going to have to go through and board it up, they're going to have to winterize it, they're going to have to do a lot of different things for asset preservation reasons. They're going to have to keep that property taken care of. All right? So how do the banks benefit from a pre-foreclosure, from a foreclosure? How do they benefit by foreclosing on someone's property? All right? Oops, what happened there? Hit the wrong button. Back it up. I don't know why the pictures aren't showing up, but apparently the pictures aren't showing up. But the primary benefit for a bank is they get to wipe the slate clean. What do I mean by wipe the slate clean? If I have a first position lien and I have full rights to foreclose on that property, whenever I foreclose, any other liens or any other claims to title on that property will get wiped at the foreclosure, meaning that the bank can get the collateral back, the collateral being the house. They can get the house back free and clear of any liens. Now, if you have a junior mortgage foreclosing, it will be subject to the first position, second, or superior lien, but all of that will be discussed in the lien position class that we're going to have here in the next couple of episodes. So coming back, any input on that from the panel? Any input from this so far? Or keep it moving?
Sound
Oh,
like
yeah, this can get real crazy. I bought a non-performing second, then we foreclosed on non-performing second. Now we had to make on the first. So to get the baby on the first, you got a cash flow. So eventually wrapped it. So we wrapped it to get and kept the cash flow between. So that borrower pays the underlying mortgage. Since we foreclosed on us from a selling position, we actually now fell into the first lien. And but we were responsible for making an underlying mortgage, but we wrapped it. So now we're underlying our private buyer is now making the payment on the loan, and we keep the cash flow. So it can get very creative quickly as you talk about the different lien positions and foreclosures.
Well, cool stuff. All right. Any other quick comments or feeds, or you want me to keep pushing forward so we can get into some of the more deeper details?
All right.
Let's keep it going. All right. I don't want to. I've never done a Zoom stream like this before where I've got multiple panelists on here, so I want to make sure that it's fair for y'all. So if there's ever something that y'all think that I missed or maybe I even said wrong, I'll be as humble as possible. Like, I have zero ego. If I said something wrong, correct me. Please do. Please correct me here, because I don't want anybody to go out here and do something wrong. So any feedback, please let me know. Okay, so let's go back over here. Ultimately, the goal, though, is for the bank to get the property back free and clear of all liens so that that property can be resold to recoup any of their lost investment. Okay? So what gives them the right to do this? You know, the banks they can't just go out there and foreclose without any sort of due process and or security instrument in place that gives them the right to do this. So what gives them the right? Ultimately, it's some form of lien. There's going to be some form of lien placed against that house, and then it's that lien that is going to give them the right to foreclose. Now, there's several different types of liens. So let's talk about those four. I don't have that there yet. Okay, I guess we'll talk about it later. But essentially, you've got judicial, which are going to be a mortgage. That mortgage is going to outline the terms of that foreclosure and what that foreclosure should look like. And then in non-judicial states, you're going to have deeds of trust. And deeds of trust will outline the terms of the foreclosure and the process required to move forward with that. Now, all of those things taken into consideration, you know what? It's that security instrument. It's the lien that allows the foreclosure to move forward. And ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what we're going to be looking at to market to these people with. So I guess I'll move on to the next slide. I don't know why I'm so nervous tonight. All right, let's keep on going. Mortgages versus deeds of trust. That's what I was just talking about. I need y'all to remember two things. For everybody out there watching right now, we've got probably around 120 to 130 people watching right now. With all of y'all watching right now, in the United States, we have 50 different states. We have 50 different foreclosure processes. But I can generally sum the two of them up into two baskets. One of them is judicial, meaning I have to involve a judge, and I have to get a lawsuit involved to get the court's approval to take this home away. Or we have a non-judicial bucket, and that really just means if you follow steps 1 through 15, you can foreclose on the property without any involvement from the courts at all. I need y'all to remember that. You essentially have two basic types of foreclosure, judicial and non-judicial. Your homework for the night should be for you to find out in any of the states that you're operating in, what type of foreclosure process are you looking at, judicial or non-judicial, okay? Whenever I take those two statements into effect, there's really essentially two types of security instruments that really kind of dictate what type that's going to be. In judicial states, you're typically dealing with mortgages. That's going to be the security instrument. You've also got deeds of trust. Deeds of trust is the security instrument for non-judicial states. Like in Texas, we're going to have deeds of trust. Deeds of trust get filed in public record. Okay? Moving forward. How do the banks foreclose? 50 states, 50 different ways, but it's all in the paperwork. Absolutely all in the paperwork that they use during the purchase of that property. If anybody in here has ever bought a house and you sat down at the title company or the closing attorney and you signed off on 177 different pages of paperwork, about 170-ish of those papers had disclosures and all of those other fun little documents that they had to have signed. There's really only a couple of documents that actually handle the transfer of the ownership, that being the deed to the house, and then you're going to have the security instrument and the real estate lien note. That's probably at most 20 to 25 pages. The other 170 or 150 or 200 pages are all disclosures, okay? But all of those paperwork is really going to decide how they foreclose in addition to your state's laws, okay? So what is signed at the purchase? You're going to have a promissory note, also known as a real estate lien note, probably better known as a real estate lien note, but that right there is the paperwork that says, I borrowed $200,000 from the bank. I owe them 5% interest payable over 30 years in equal monthly installments. Something along those lines. Something else that's going to be signed is a security instrument, whether that be the mortgage or the deed of trust. There's going to be some form of security instrument. What's that security instrument's responsibility? It outlines what the bank's responsibilities are to move forward with the foreclosure process. Like, okay, if you don't do this, this, or this, I have to do this, this, and this to foreclose. That document is either going to be your mortgage or your deed of trust. What else gets signed? You're going to have a blank ton of disclosures. I'm talking about a equal ton of disclosures. I'm talking about hundreds of pages of disclosures. So when you're sitting down, really, like if you're buying a house for cash, you need to sign approximately 2 pages, maybe 10 pages of disclosures from the title company. But all in all, you're not killing a tree to get that property purchased. All of that extra paperwork is all involved with bank disclosures. Okay? And then the final thing that's going to get signed at closing is a deed to transfer ownership. Okay? What shows the owner of a house? The deed. The deed is the only thing that shows the owner of a house. Okay? Now, we also have another document called a deed of trust. Do not mistake the two as being the same. There is a big difference between a deed and a deed of trust. Now, you've got different types of deeds. You've got warranty deeds, special warranty deeds, general warranty deeds. You've got quitclaim deeds. There's all different types of deeds, but the deed shows who owns the house. A deed of trust is a security instrument. Big difference between the two. Separate those in your mind. Do not allow those two to be confused with each other. Okay? We'll keep that moving forward.
Great one there. Hey, somebody had a question before you go too far from it, Daniel. Let's see here. Eric wants to know, do banks send out BPO after a few missed payments?
I'm not 110% positive on every bank's responsibility. They might do a drive-by BPO. They might do a online real quick assessment. Like a lot of times they'll have AVMs, automated valuation models, where they're able to really quickly kind of get a ballpark estimate. But no, they have no right to send somebody into that house. They're like, the only true way to do a BPO is an internal BPO. And the banks don't have the right to put somebody in that house. They might do something internal to kind of get a ballpark, probably an AVM, an automated valuation model. But the likelihood of them doing a BPO is limited because it costs them money. Like they're going to have to pay $75, $100, $150 to pull that off. The BPO is not going to be allowed into the house. So the best they're going to be able to do is just drive by, take a picture of the outside of the house and say, yeah, there's still a house there. It's not burned to the ground. So most banks aren't going to do that. Okay?
Great. And also, for people who are wondering, what is a BPO, a broker's price opinion? You're going to send a broker out.
Yep, broker's price opinion. So broker's price opinion is kind of like a non-appraisal. It's kind of like you got an appraisal, which is done by a certified appraiser, and then you're going to have what's called a BPO, a broker's price opinion. That's going to be done by a licensed real estate agent that is going to give their opinion of the value based upon whatever it is they're able to access, such as exterior view, interior view, external, internal BPO. That's what a BPO is. You'll deal with a lot of those when you start doing short sales. Tons of BPOs and short sales.
Yeah, one thing you should mention too is that the difference between judicial and non-judicial, amount of time that it takes to
big time.
To actually foreclose. There's a big difference in time.
Huge difference. I think we'll touch base on that here in the next couple of slides, actually, because there is a very big difference between those two processes. So let's talk about that here for a second. Let's see if I can bring some of that here for you. All right, so we've got two different types of processes, judicial versus non-judicial, but promissory notes. And a promissory note coupled with a security instrument should perfect a lien in public record. You know, if I've got a solid real estate lien note, promissory note, and I have a security instrument, and I properly record that in public record, I now have a lien against that house. That is what's going to give me the right to move forward and foreclose on this property. Okay? So, Those rights can be controlled via a mortgage, which is a judicial process, or a deed of trust, which is a non-judicial process. Two different processes with the same outcome, though. It ends up with a foreclosure. The property's going to go to foreclosure. So depending upon what state you're in, you're really going to need to kind of up your knowledge on these two topics. Okay? Now, the deed of trust is the due process. What do I mean by due process? The property can be sold at auction without court involvement as long as the state's due process is followed. Like in the state of Texas, it's a 41-day process. I got to do a 21-day notice to cure. I have to, a 20-day notice to cure. I, as the trustee on the deed of trust, I have to send out a demand letter and say you've got 20 days to catch up all of your past due payments. If those past due payments are not corrected within the next 20 days, we will proceed with a foreclosure. The next step after that 20-day notice to cure is a 21-day public notice. They now must go publish public notice at the local county courts stating that they intend to foreclose on that property on the first Tuesday of the next month, a minimum of 21 days out. That 21-day notice must be public, and at the end of that 21-day notice, they can take that property to auction. There's a little extra caveats here and there, but overall, that's just the general process. It's not very difficult in the state of Texas to knock out a foreclosure. It's not. But there are other states, like judicial states. You know what? I just said 41 days in the state of Texas. I was having a conversation with Taryn earlier. The average in Broward County, Florida, is 3 years. There's a big difference in that time frame. Like a due process state. If you are a real estate investor in a due process state, one of the key things that you should understand is that the seller's motivation should be motivated. Like, this process is starting. This ain't going to be, a couple of years of dragging this out. It's going to be done. You're done. Whereas in a judicial state, a lot of these homeowners are educated enough to realize that, the foreclosure process has started, but I've still got a couple of years to hang out here. I don't have to make a payment for the next couple of years. That's kind of to their benefit if they're not really well employed. I'll just take the next 2 to 3 years, and I won't make any payments on my house, and I'll live for free for the next 2 to 3 years. Am I wrong in saying that, anybody?
Nope, that's exactly correct. And and they're not repairing the house either.
Exactly.
So the bank gets it back in terrible condition.
Now, one of the things to take into consideration on that I think is beneficial to the people that are in those states is that, what's happening during that entire 2 to 3 years of not making any payments? The arrears just keep going up and up and up. Yep. And as those arrears continue to go up, guess what happens to the equity that might have been there? It just continues to shrink. So over time, that house that had equity now turns into a short sale. So if you can get in touch with these people early on in the foreclosure process, and you do have short sale experience, you can likely convert these people, because at the end of their 2 to 3 year long run of sitting in the house not making any payments, they might be able to walk away from it in some form of short sale. Does that seem fair for the judicial people on the panel?
Yeah, and Daniel, I also, when they have equity in the property, what we tell the homeowners is, we try to get them to understand that they're actually losing money. They think they're living there for free, but they're actually losing not only their mortgage payment, but all the attorney fees, all the back payments. They're actually costing more money for them to stay in that house than it is to sell it and move into and rent somewhere else. So it eats it up really quickly, and that helps them see the motivation if they have equity to move forward. And then, of course, if they're in that low equity situation, then it's going to be a short sale at some point in time. So they just kind of hang out.
I love that you brought that up, because I think that's an excellent point that needs to be taken into consideration. So there's a great negotiation tip for you right there. Like, if the seller's thinking, I'll just stay here for the next 2 to 3 years, and they do have equity in the property, well, it's kind of like a choice right now. It's like, do you want to watch that equity evaporate to nothing and then walk away at the end of it with nothing? Or would you prefer to go ahead and cash that equity out right now before it gets absorbed in all of these fees that are going to stack up real fast? You're going to lose money fast if you go that route. So I love that you brought that up. Great point. Thank you.
Yeah, I just came across a lady the other day that her house is she's got about $20,000 worth of extra fees added on to her total payoff amount, just because she's let it sit.
And that's $20,000 that could have been in her back pocket. So whenever you bring it to the seller's attention with that kind of blatant honesty, then they might actually turn around and be like, okay, that makes sense. I can put $20,000 in my pocket now, or I can stay in this house for another 7 months and watch it disappear. For me, if I'm in a situation where I'm cash poor, $20,000 sounds pretty good. Better than 7 months of free rent. $20,000 to buy me a nice little mobile home. You know what? I don't ever have to pay rent again. Put me in an RV. I'm retired. Let's go. You know what? Ramen noodles in an RV and I'm done. Let's go. So let's keep it moving. Let's keep it moving. All right. Thank you, everybody. Let's see here. Where are we at? What happened to my... What happened here? Something just happened. Boom. It broke. Oh, nope. There. I think I'm back. Something real crazy just happened on my side. Sorry, guys. Let's see here. All right. Back to the slides. All right. Notice of trustee sale. Notice of default. Public document is filed to place creditors and lien holders on notice. This is the general non-judicial foreclosure process. Once again, you do have to go back to your state and verify it from there. But typically, you're going to have some sort of public document filed to place creditors and lien holders on notice. In addition to that, there's going to be an opportunity to repay within a specific period of time. It's not just like, you know what, we're going to take your property to foreclosure in 2 days and it's done. They have some typical right to cure. So you're going to need to figure out how that works in your state. And then the property sold at auction. It's fairly simple. We're going to have some sort of notices, and then from that point forward, we take this thing to auction. And this is a fast process. For anybody that's in non-judicial states, this process is typically less than 6 months. Now that we do have some federal regulations involved, like the SAFE Act as well as Dodd-Frank. I believe the SAFE Act says it's a minimum of 120 days in default, and I believe Dodd-Frank says it's a minimum of 180 days in default. But at the end of that initial federal required default period, that foreclosure process can be as little as 2 months to as long as maybe 6 months. But overall, we will say that across the board, it's likely less than a year, and more often than not, somewhere around that 6 to 9 month mark. So if you're in a non-judicial state, you can see those things move forward rather rapidly. Okay.
And also, Daniel, somebody's asking over here. Zach is asking, can you brief? What is he asking? Let's see, where did he go? That's Eric. How does the CARES Act affect the foreclosure process now? Do you know how that affects everything?
That is a beautiful question that I have no answer to. So if there's somebody else on the panel that understands the CARES Act in response to the foreclosure process that can give me some feedback, great. If not, I'd say that's an attorney question because I don't have an answer for that one.
It does extend it. I don't have a full answer for that. It has extended it, and they're not too sure if they're going to allow it to extend another 6 months if they're already in default. So in judicial situations right now, they're not allowed to move forward with foreclosures, and that's inside of the CARES Act. So that's like a little basis, but I would definitely go look at an attorney. And Daniel, I dropped in the Facebook and in the Zoom the realtytrack.com link. Okay. That will give you every single state and whether they're judicial or non-judicial, their typical process time. And they just need to go verify if that's true or, if the information's correct.
I appreciate that.
Another thing that might delineate too a little bit between the CARES Act applying and not applying is if it's a federally backed loan. So if it's a federally backed loan by Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, the CARES Act would apply. But if it's maybe a conventional, it might not follow Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac guidelines. If it's an investor, owner to owner, kind of a seller financing, the CARES Act probably would not apply to that. Would not apply. So you would be able to just follow your regular state's rules. And so how the loan originated is a factor in whether CARES Act applies.
Makes sense. Appreciate that. All right, so let's move on. All right, wrong button. There we go. All right, so they may have rights to redeem. So I've got that last little statement in there. Some states, whether it's judicial or non-judicial, I don't know about the judicial side, but the seller may have the right to redeem the property. What do I mean by redeem? The property goes to auction and the house gets sold. The previous homeowner is no longer the owner and the property is sold at auction. Some states provide a redemption period where the state says, you know what, if the property was sold, within the next 6 months after that, if you're able to fix the problem and do X, Y, Z, you can get the house back. That normally entails, you know what, you need to pay off whatever was paid for at the auction, you need to pay off in your arrears, you need to do X, Y, or Z. But there are some states where the homeowners have the right to get that property back after the auctions. For instance, in the state of Texas. Texas does have redemption periods for tax foreclosures, only tax foreclosures, not mortgage foreclosures. If a property goes to foreclosure in the state of Texas at a sheriff's sale under a tax auction, the homeowner within the first year after it was sold may buy the property back at whatever it was sold at auction for plus 25%. So if it was sold at auction for $100,000, they have to pay $125,000 to get the house back. If they don't do that within the first 12 months, then after that, they have to pay 50% on top of what it was bought for. So instead of paying it $125,000 for it in the first year, they would now have to pay $150,000 for it in the second year. More often than not, it's not the homeowners that are able to move forward with that redemption period. It's more often the banks. Like if a bank got wiped out at that tax foreclosure, it's the bank that's going to execute that redemption right to get that asset back after it went to foreclosure. So you need to figure out if your state has redemption rights, and if they do, understand what those redemption rights are, because you as a foreclosure investor might need to know that when you bought the house, you know what? The homeowner might have the right to buy it back from you. So you need to know those types of things. Okay? Coming back over here, let's take a look at mortgages, the lawsuit. This is not a due process. This is a get the courts involved, get a judge involved, and make sure that you have the right to move forward and you've got the judge's permission to do so. So this is going to be required to get a judge involved. It's going to be taken before it can be sold at the public auction. Now, key points for judicial foreclosures, 110% honesty, and I've told everybody this in the past, I'm not a judicial investor. I have never once dealt with a judicial foreclosure in my life. The only thing I can speak on here is my own personal research. But fortunate for us, we have some wonderful panel members that do understand the judicial process. So maybe they can help me clarify some things if I get this wrong. Okay? So feel free to tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. So let's keep on looking. You must file initially a complaint and summons filed to initiate a lawsuit. You need to get something along those lines started. From there, you're going to see a lis pendens is filed in county record to put the public on notice of a pending lawsuit. Lis pendens, I do believe, directly translates from Latin to pending suit. There's a lawsuit pending. And if the owner loses the suit in the court, will enter a judgment for lender to sell the home. Once that judgment for the lender to sell the home has been pushed through in the courts, the property can then be taken to auction and sold at public auction. And just like in non-judicial states, the seller may have the right to redeem that property back at auction. Does anybody on the panel have some additional points to put out on that topic?
Yeah, so we don't really have, once it goes to sale, we can't redeem, but we can vacate the sale, right? But you have to have a legal standing in order to be able to vacate it. So for, let's say you came to an agreement or you paid off the mortgage and the sale didn't have time to stop, you can vacate it after the fact.
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, there's, in anybody that has a judicial, you want to get into your court records and kind of look at different cases and see how it runs through, because it flows with the standard process. The complaint lis pendens, which is the notice of default, are filed together. Then the summons happens. Once they get served, they have 20 days in order to answer that. If they don't answer that default, then they put them into a, what is the word for it? I forget what the word is, but it basically speeds it up, right? Then you have your non-jury trial. And from the non-jury trial, once they have that, they will generally set the sale date, and it can be anywhere from 30, 60, 90 to 120 days from the non-jury trial. And during that period, you can still, that's when your homeowners tend to get more motivated and realize that the end is coming. During that time, you can do a short sale or you can buy the property during there. In some areas, you can postpone the sale date with no real good reason other than I'm working on something. Others, you can't. So I've seen sale dates postponed 6-7 times with the right attorney, right? Sometimes they'll use a bankruptcy, like a suggestion of bankruptcy, in order to stop that sale on the day in order to get some things done. And then I'll just throw in here, if they are underwater, which I think we're going to start to see a lot of in about 8 to 12 months, if they are underwater, most banks will not look at a short sale 37 days before a sale date. So if you haven't got your package into the bank by the 38th day prior to the sale date, they typically speaking won't look at it. And then you have to wait and postpone that sale date.
And that's really coming from HUD guidelines, right? I mean, the HUD guidelines really kind of dictate on any federally backed mortgage the time frames in which a short sale must be initiated. Like, you're not going to be able to initiate a short sale 9 years into delinquency. That should have been handled a little bit beforehand. Is that correct?
No, you can initiate it. I'm actually looking at initiating one where he's already got a stipulated agreement for cash for keys. He's already been paid $2,500. He's already sent the keys in, and he's left the house. But the bank doesn't have title yet because the sale date was postponed due to COVID. So we still have the opportunity to do a short sale. Now, the question is, why would the lender do that? Well, it's cheaper to sell it to me short than it is to get the property back for all of the reasons you just said. They might end up having to, preserve the property. They'll end up not taking care of it and end up with liens on it. And the cities won't reduce those liens if it's a bank that owns it, right? Because they can get the money from it. So that's why they would even now look to short sale. And so, like, in this particular instance, I'm going to be telling the bank, like, look, you don't know if COVID is going to cause us not to have a foreclosure sale for 6 months, 12 months. And at that time, you're going to have a slew of other foreclosures coming in. Doesn't it make sense just to sell it now to me?
Great. I love those negotiation tactics. So I'm glad that you brought those up. So let's keep this train moving. Let's see where else we can go from here. So we've now really discussed, and for those of you that are really new to the foreclosure process, you should now at least have a strong understanding of what's going on there, judicial versus non-judicial, deeds of trust versus court involvements. We should have that figured out, and we're going to continue talking about this. And we're going to open up and make sure that if you have questions on this, you can get them answered. And do remember, this is going to be a 4-part mini-series. So we're taking you from the beginning, which is you need to understand what's going on, into the who are we actually going to market to, and then taking it to how are we going to contract them, and then how are we going to negotiate with the bank to get this foreclosure stopped. So these are all the things that we're going to be talking about over the course of this 4-part mini-series. So do make sure that you set your calendar, stay in touch, stay tuned in, and do make sure that you give all these wonderful panelists some applause, give them some follows out there on social media, and tell them all thank you for being a part of this wonderful, wonderful class today. Thank you for doing it. Thank you for taking the time out of your evening to be a part of this, and make sure that all of y'all that are watching, to make sure that you go out there and show them some love. So let's continue moving this class forward. So
one quick question, Daniel.
Yes, sir.
They want to know what is the difference between a pre-foreclosure and a foreclosure, and is that 41 days you were talking about earlier, is that a pre-foreclosure in Texas?
So yes, the 41 days I was talking about was a Texas process. Now, what do I consider pre-foreclosure? Until that property has sold at auction, it is pre-foreclosure, in my opinion. At the moment that the property is sold, the foreclosure has happened. Foreclosure is done. The property is now a foreclosed property. Everything up until the sale of that property at auction is pre-foreclosure, in my opinion. So pre-foreclosure and foreclosure are considered to be two separate things. A lot of times it will be considered synonymous within the real estate investing community, but I invest in pre-foreclosures. I'm not really an auction buyer. I don't like going to properties and buying properties at auction. And I'm not really an REO guy either. I've bought REOs, I've bought at auctions, but that's not really my wheelhouse. I consider myself to buy pre-foreclosure, meaning I'm trying to attract and work with homeowners prior to the auction and it getting actually sold at auction. So that's kind of
and I would say that a pre-foreclosure is the time from when they get behind and they get a notice of default, and then a foreclosure is from the notice of default till sale.
Okay, so that's a different way of looking at it. So
A different way, but yeah, technically the same thing.
one of the things to take a look at on that is I don't really know that there's a defined definition for pre-foreclosure. So when you are having conversations with other investors, you may need to help to move that conversation along, help understand what their definition of it might be, because they might be looking at it two different ways. So, I don't really know. That's just my opinion. Leanna's got one, and you know what? I don't necessarily know that there's a clearly defined definition. So you might need to work, and if you're talking to somebody, make sure that what you're assuming they're saying is exactly what they mean.
Yeah, that's why I just asked specifically, when is the auction date?
Yes.
And let them tell me, and go from there, whatever you want to call it.
Most definitely.
Yeah, some people go off of when did you get your notice of default, because you can be defaulted for usually 90 days before they actually send you a notice.
I've
Then
seen
you're in
companies
foreclosure.
default for 4 or 5 years that haven't even started the
Yeah.
foreclosure process. I mean, haven't had a house payment
Yeah.
made in 5 years, still nothing happening. Like I like those properties. I personally like those properties, but
Well,
I've seen
the
them
banks
go
make
on.
their Yeah, the banks make the rules up kind of as they go a little bit. So
Kind of is what it is. So let's move forward. Let's see what we got coming up next. So that was the mortgage process for a judicial foreclosure, and it is often a very lengthy process. I'd say on average a judicial foreclosure is going to likely be at least 18 months to 2 years. I know at one point in time I saw some statistics for like Illinois, New York, Florida, California, and they were all years. It wasn't months, it was years. So these homeowners are likely in some level of knowledge that understand that, you know what, this isn't going to happen very fast. So you approach these types of leads probably a little bit different than you would. So when you are looking at your state and knowing the difference between judicial and non-judicial, the sellers that you're working with might have different mindsets. When I'm dealing in a due process state, they know that, like, I'm 2 weeks away from my house being gone. Whereas if I'm dealing with a judicial state, these homeowners might be like, I know it's 2 years before my house is gone. And you know what? I like the free rent life. This is really feeling good to me. I like it. So you've got different types of people when you're talking to these two different types of foreclosures. Okay? So some key talking points and homework for that is to do your due diligence. Find out what's going on in your state. Like, I cannot do that for you. There's absolutely nothing I can do to sit here and educate you on all 50 states and the little nuances of each and every single one of them. But you are a sophisticated real estate investor. You will go home and research your laws, and you will figure this out. Some other key things that you could probably do from this particular section of the class is go out and look up in your public records and find a copy of a deed of trust. Find a copy of a deed. Find a copy of a mortgage and go through and read several of them. You know, it's not going to hurt you to sit down and read. Like a deed of trust, short side 6 pages long, long side 12 to 13 pages long. So go through and read 4 or 5 of them. Get an understanding of what's in there. You'll find that the terms of default will vary from lender to lender. There are other defaults outside of just you didn't make a payment to me. Well, guess what? If you didn't pay your taxes, the bank might be able to consider that a default. If you don't pay for your insurance, the bank might consider that a default. If you don't maintain the property, or if you leave the property vacant, there are deeds of trust that include that into their terms of default. So you do need to understand that these deeds of trust have a lot of information in them. Okay. So
sometimes the foreclosing entity is in a bank. It could be an HOA.
Yeah, that's another key point. Is like, and that HOA has a super lien. You know, we kind of refer to those as super liens. That HOA was recorded in public record long before that lien was, and with that HOA being a part of public record, they have rights to enforce fees, to collect fees, and if those fees are not paid, the HOA can foreclose on it. So you do need to keep those things into consideration when you are looking at who is the entity actually foreclosing. Is it a first position lien, second position lien? Is it an HOA? Is it a tax auction? What's going on here? Is it a mechanics lien that's going on?
So reverse mortgages.
yeah,
You know, so
Reverse mortgages are foreclosing.
that's some fun stuff.
And I will say that the HOA will be the fastest entity to foreclose on you. They're faster than anybody else, and what they'll do is they'll foreclose and they'll put a renter in order to make the money while they wait for the first to catch up with the foreclosure process.
Fun times. Fun times.
yeah. And I
Fun times.
have a list of non-performing notes that I'm working. So
I can't hear you.
if I said I have a list of non-performing notes that I'm working. So I'll be foreclosing if I can't get a hold of people. So it's interesting the different ways, you know.
Fun stuff. Fun stuff.
Mhm.
There's a million different ways to invest in real estate. Like, I am by no means an Encyclopedia Britannica of massive different ways of investing. I have my specialties, and I'll openly admit what I feel comfortable discussing from a professional standpoint and what I have absolutely no experience in. And there are so many different ways to approach real estate that, you know what, you have something on real estate that you can likely find that fits your personality well, and invest in that. Like, you know what, if you're not the best cold caller in the world, well, then don't cold call. Don't force yourself to do something that you're not good at. Find something that is in that real estate vein, if real estate is your passion, that fits your personality well, and approach it. Like non-performing notes. Is that real estate? Kind of, yeah, I kind of know. I mean, it's notes. It's a little bit different. It's paper. It's the paper side of real estate. But you know what? For some people, they love the paper side of real estate. Me? No, I don't like the paper. I'd much rather have the physical asset. But there's a lot of differences of opinions on that. So there is no one way to do real estate. There's millions of different ways of doing this. So let's move on to the next section. Okay, wrong button. There we go. All right. let's see here. Who do I market to? Who am I going to market to find a pre-foreclosure owner? This is fairly simple because this is almost always a part of public record. Okay? Who's behind on payments? Let me pause on that for just a second. Just because somebody is behind on payments does not necessarily mean that the bank has started the foreclosure process. I could be 30 days late. I could be 60 days late, 90 days late, 120 days late before the bank does anything in the form of public record. So, when we start looking at this, some things that you might take into consideration. I don't know what's going on with, I'm going to have to figure this whole Zoom thing out again sometime in the future because I don't know that my audio and other things are working out exactly like I want them to. But for those of you that are watching this, please bear with my technology difficulties. 30, 60, 90-day lates, 120-day lates, credit bureau lists. This is kind of like that mystical list that many people are like, you can't get them. Other people are like, yeah, you can. Other people are saying, no, you absolutely cannot. Well, I will lean towards and go ahead and tell you, you absolutely can. How can I tell you you absolutely can? It's because I've gotten them before. You can get default lists, credit bureau default lists. They're not easy to find. They're not easy to get. And they do have very specific laws regarding how you are allowed to market to them. I am not going to be your lawyer. I'm not going to pretend like I know the law that well. You need to get your own legal advice before you approach any credit bureau list. But there are things out there like the credit bureau lists where these lists are heavily regulated by the CFPB, the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, and the FCRA, which is the Fair Credit Reporting Act. These lists that you can obtain of people that are defaulting on their mortgage are heavily regulated. One of the key things that are involved in that law is the law states that the advertising must make firm offers of credit or insurance. Once again, I am not your attorney. You need to seek legal advice before marketing to these lists. Look at the very bottom line of that. Very big, bold letters that says consult with proper legal counsel prior to any advertising with these lists. But if you do go through and you do secure yourself an attorney and you speak with this attorney and you're like, how can I advertise to these lists legally and responsibly? That is a list resource that you might be able to target to find people that are not that far into the default process. I have marketed these lists in the past. Whenever I've marketed these, I have found that the motivation really isn't there at 30 days late. There's really limited and no motivation at all. Same with the 60 days late. 90 days, still not so great. But what I've found is around the 120-day late mark is where I have found most people start coming to the realization that they're not catching up and they are more tuned to listening to what you've got to say. 30, 60-day late, they're just like, I got this taken care of. I'm getting a job. We're done. Nope. Leave me alone. Stop talking to me. Blank, blank, blank. Around the 120-day mark is where I would typically start my marketing on those particular types of lists if you have consulted with your attorney and you have found a way that you feel like you are within the confines of the law and you are not doing anything illegal. Okay? Do remember.
Daniel,
Yes,
you got a question over here on YouTube in regards to this marketing. Do you go to the county to find these pre-foreclosures, buy a list, or look online? I'm guessing they go to Propelio.com, but I don't know. I'll let you tell them that.
I'm going to give them the straightforward and the best answer, and that is the best list that you will ever get is going to come straight from the county courthouse or wherever it's recorded. And you need to show up there every single day and build your own list right there at the courthouse. There is no way that I could possibly think of to get a better list than actually being there at the moment that public record notice is filed. Now, you do have imaging services in more advanced county public records or courthouses that image those documents in relatively quickly. But guess what? If that's 5 hours later, well, you're 5 hours late to the list. And when we're talking about pre-foreclosure, speed, especially in non-judicial states, is critical. It's like Texas, Arizona. Both of them are tied in the union for the fastest foreclosure processes in the union. I know that I have limited time on that list. So if I am a Texas investor and I want to have the absolute best list I could possibly ever get, is to go straight to the courthouse and just hang out there. And every time a new public record notice is filed, I immediately go take a look at it, figure out who the debtor is on it, and start marketing to that person. Okay, that marketing might be a skip trace. That marketing might be a call up my door knocking crew and be like, hey, go over there real quick. Go do something. Whatever that ends up being. That's the best list you can get. Now, in behind that, there are other people that resell lists. Now, with the people that resell lists, you need to confirm how they are building those lists. If you are doing pre-foreclosures on a non-judicial state and you're working with a national data aggregator, your lists are likely going to be old. And I'm going to be straight up with you. Those are not going to be your prime lists. Now, when you are dealing with non-judicial states, you will often find in the major metropolitan areas there will likely be a local foreclosure listing service that is in tune with that process that can get you some really prime lists and fast. Now, your best bet is in a local market, finding that local list builder. Maybe that is somebody that's made their full-time job just sitting at the courthouse, building that list for you and releasing it out every single day. Now, for the Texas markets, the major Texas markets, Propelio does that for you in a similar fashion. Outside of Texas, Propelio does not do that. We do offer national pre-foreclosure lists, but those come from national data aggregators. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not here to sell you snake oil. A pre-foreclosure list on a non-judicial state from a national data aggregator is going to be a list that's at least probably a week old. And if that list is a week old and you've got a lot of people marketing that list prior to that week, you're working an old list. And I have to be honest with you, because I'm not going to sit here and try and misguide you, because I know you're going to be putting your marketing dollars, and more so your life, your effort, your time. Time's the one thing you only have a finite amount of towards doing this. If you really want to get good at pre-foreclosures in a non-judicial state, judicial states, you got a lot more time, in my opinion. Non-judicial states, you need to make a part-time job out of camping out at the courthouse. Guaranteed, though, if you do that consistently for a long period of time, it will pay itself off. Okay?
100% agree with that.
Good stuff. Any other questions over there, Chris?
Look like you're good for now. We got some more, but I don't want to mess up the flow.
All right. Good times, then. All right. I'm going to keep this moving forward. Let's see what we got next here on the list. So we talked about the credit bureau lists. You can source those. They are not easy to get. So we'll move forward from there. Bank accelerates the note. Once somebody's 30, 60, 90 days late and they start being defaulted on that note, at some point in time the bank is going to accelerate the note. What do I mean by accelerate the note? What they're saying, and this is often a part of your deed of trust or your mortgage, the security instrument, and if the security instrument does not have the right to accelerate in the security instrument, they can't. They can't accelerate. But an acceleration clause is this. At any point in time, if you are in default on the loan, I am allowed to call the entire loan due. That is what the acceleration clause is in a security instrument. The security instrument must have that clause in it. If the acceleration clause is not in the security instrument, they cannot call the entire loan due. All they can do is foreclose on the amount owed to them, and you still have the loan still in place. So almost all loans will have an acceleration clause in the security instrument. But all that is saying is, I know that you're only behind $6,000, but since you're behind $6,000, you owe me the whole $200,000 I loaned you. So that's what they mean by accelerate the loan. I know that I told you could have that loan over 30 years. That's not the case anymore. I want it all today. That's the acceleration clause. So the bank will accelerate the note, and then once they've accelerated the note after the default, there's going to be two different processes, but it essentially comes out with the same outcome. It's the foreclosure. They either have to go the due process route, which is your non-judicial route, or they have to go to the judicial route and take the court's involvement and sue somebody to get them out of the house. But overall, once we go down that line, who are we going to market to from there? On a non-judicial state, we have an ancillary product of this market. And I want to talk about this for a second. It's called substitute trustees. Now, I'm going to have to talk about the security instrument for just a minute to make this make sense. The bank is not the one responsible for the foreclosure in a deed of trust state, in a non-judicial state. That security instrument is called a deed of trust. Now, we've probably heard that word trust used in several different ways. We've got property trust, we've got land trust, we've got all different types of trusts. Well, this one is a deed of trust. And there is a trustee appointed on that deed of trust. And that trustee is the one that is responsible for managing the trust. Who is the trustee? When the bank creates this, the trustee is likely going to be someone on the legal side that is appointed as the trustee on the deed of trust. Well, when it's time to foreclose, it is the responsibility of the trustee to do the foreclosure process. That's the trustee's duty. Now, let's say this property is 15 years in on a mortgage. That trustee may not even be alive anymore. That trustee might not be around anymore. And wholeheartedly, most big banks work with a big foreclosing attorney firm in that metropolitan area. Like here in Dallas-Fort Worth. I cannot remember their name, but it's like Brenna, Turner, Frapper, Engel, and there's like 9 associates on that foreclosure house. But they do probably like 90%. It's like Darren, Frapper, Turner, Engel, and associates or something like that. But they're the ones that do probably like 80 to 90% of all the foreclosures in DFW, because that is the only thing that legal office does, and they do it cheap. They charge like $1,200. Boom, here's your foreclosures, done. Well, what's going to happen is whenever this bank goes to move forward with this foreclosure process, the trustee that is on the deed of trust is who's responsible for doing it. But that trustee might have been on there for 15 years. They might no longer be associated with it. So there's going to be a step often involved with this called an appointment of substitute trustee. Okay? Let's see this. Oops, let me back that up. Or I'll just leave it right there. What is the appointment of substitute trustee? Sometimes it's called a removal of trustee. Sometimes it's called XYZ. It's not regulated, at least not in Texas. There is no regulation in the due process that states a bank must file this document. What I have found, though, through my experience in pre-foreclosures, is that this document will almost always be filed. And what I've also found is that that document will often be filed at least several weeks prior to the notice of notice of trustee sale being filed in public records. What is happening here is the bank is saying, I'm going to fire the trustee that's on the deed of trust. Gone. Okay, I don't want to confuse y'all here, but there is a trustee named on the deed of trust. When the bank goes to hire a new trustee, one of the first things that new trustee is going to do is file a public record document called an appointment of substitute trustee. Sometimes it's called appointment/removal of trustee. Sometimes it's called removal of trustee. You need to figure out what this document has. I know they're in Missouri, they've got them too, because I used to do some pre-foreclosure marketing up there in Missouri. But what we're going to do is we're going to have that document, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start looking for public record filings that have that document out there, because I have found that it is often filed before the notice of trustee sale. And if I can get to it before everybody else is marketing the notice of trustee sale, I've got a couple of weeks window of marketing before everybody else does. Okay? I do need to make this very clear, though. Since this is not a regulated document, this document can be filed for any reason. Just because that document is filed does not necessarily mean that the home is in pre-foreclosure. That document might have been filed because the note got sold, and the new owner of the note, for whatever reason, wanted to transfer the trustee. I've seen that happen. It's not often, but I'd say probably 95 out of 100 of the appointments of substitute trustees filed, it has almost always been tied to some level of default. Now, I'll mark it to that list, and when I do mark it to that list, I'll get a phone call quite often from somebody like, "Hey, I'm not in foreclosure," and I'll be like, "Okay, well, there was a document filed in public record here recently called an appointment of substitute trustee that had your name and property address on it. I don't know if you were aware that was filed, but by any chance, are you behind on payments?" Well, when I ask that qualifying question, guess what happens? The homeowner's like, "Yeah, I'm behind on payments, but the bank hasn't started the foreclosure process yet." Boom! I now know that this is likely a lead that is very quickly about to get a notice of default sent to them or a notice of acceleration sent to them. So I'll transfer this conversation over and be, okay, well, what happened was that the bank has filed this appointment of substitute trustee in public record. That's essentially the bank firing the old attorney, and they're hiring a new attorney to come in and handle this process. So what we're seeing is that the bank is starting to move forward with the foreclosure process on your property. Would you like to get that stopped as soon as possible? All right, now that's how I'm going to open that conversation up and get that ball moving forward. But that document is a document that has allowed me to create a personal advantage for myself in this marketplace of competition, because I can often market to that list prior to the people that are aware of the notice of trustee document. So that right there, for people in non-judicial states, that is something you could probably research and find to kind of give yourself a potential advantage in your local market. Okay,
Wow,
I
that sounds
will
like
agree.
a pre-foreclosure.
it kind of is.
I was going to say I agree because I've done the same thing.
Yeah.
And I've noticed sometimes it is just a strict sale of the note, right? Going from one hand to another. That definitely pay attention to the notices.
My odds have shown that there's a high probability that it is pre-foreclosure. So when I'm marketing,
Mhm.
I don't just say in my marketing, "Hey, your property's going to auction." I try to say something along the lines of, "There was something filed in public record that indicates your property may be going into foreclosure, because a very high majority of them are actually going into foreclosure." And I might even put some sort of disclosure on the bottom under like some sort of postscript that says, if you're not behind on your payments, please ignore this notice or something like that. But overall, that particular record has helped me out tremendously. Okay, so let me cut back over here. So mortgages. Okay, now when we're dealing with the lawsuit side of stuff, the only personal document that I know of filed in public record that we can market to in judicial states are the lis pendens. The lis pendens are filed in public record, putting the public on notice of a pending lawsuit involving that property. And beyond the lis pendens, I don't know of any other lists to market to in non-judicial states. I'm seeing Taryn shaking her head no over there, so I believe I'm accurate when I'm saying that lis pendens is the only public record document that is made available for you to market to. So for those that are in judicial states, the lis pendens is filed in public record, meaning your county courthouse, not county courthouse, your county records office. That's where you're going to go. So you may want to hang out at your county records office and just wait for every single one of those lis pendens to come in. I'm not a judicial specialist. I don't try to pretend like I am. I'm in a non-judicial state, and I've done really well in a non-judicial state, so I haven't really had to market outside of my state. But is there any caveats that anybody on the panel would like to throw in on that?
The redemption rights. That's one of the marketing tools is to market for someone who has redemption rights and try to buy their redemption right from them.
Yes, sir.
And then redeem the property.
So I've seen that. I've seen people speak on that strategy. I've never actually myself got to employ that strategy because Texas really isn't a redemption right state outside of tax auctions. Mm-hmm. But all of that taken into consideration. Does anybody else on the panel? Let me hold on a second. Before I open that up to the panel, let me explain to the crowd exactly what I'm talking about. In some states, the owner has the right to redeem the property after an auction. What do I mean by redeem? They can get the house back if they meet XYZ standards. I've heard of multiple investors use that redemption period as a way for them to market to the homeowners of a property that was foreclosed on, and then try to purchase the redemption rights for that property from the prior owner, an assignment of rights, some sort of document along those lines where, your home's already been sold. What if I gave you $2,000 for the redemption rights? What if I gave you $5,000 for the redemption rights? Well, now if it was sold at auction for $70,000 and I know that I was willing to pay $78,000 for it, well, you know what? I might be able to pay $2,000 to the previous homeowner and then redeem the property from the auction for $70,000 plus whatever fees might have been involved. It's not a strategy I've personally implemented because I'm not in a redemption state. But does anybody else have anything they want to throw in on top of that? That's kind of off topic, but we can touch base on it here for a second. Nobody?
I know.
Not yet, but I do have a question.
Yeah.
We do keep questions. Marcy P over here on YouTube wants to know, how do we find foreclosures on homes that are not foreclosing due to a mortgage or a deed of trust?
How do we find information on properties that are foreclosing that do not involve a deed of trust or a mortgage? So I'm going to lean towards you're referring to like HOA liens or someone that's got an abstract of judgment or possibly a tax auction. I'm going to still state that there's a high probability, and you're going to need to justify this within your own legal system or your own state, that they're going to still have to follow a similar process. They're going to have to file some sort of lawsuit, which means in a judicial state, they're going to have to file the lawsuit. You're going to see that lis pendens. It's still going to show up. It's just whoever's filing, whoever the plaintiff is going to be something other than a bank. In the due process states, similar stuff. Whoever is moving forward with the foreclosure is going to be the person essentially complaining or moving the foreclosure forward, but they're going to have some sort of security instrument allowing them to do so. So an HOA, they're going to file it, so you're going to find it all in the same spots. It's just the person that files the document is going to be different. But the process should still be the same from my personal understanding. Okay? All right, so let me roll forward. Oops, wrong button. I got too many buttons over here. For anybody that's never seen the backside of this studio, it is complicated. Somebody with a simple mind like mine should not be trying to do this and operate a webinar at the same time. I do not have the brain capacity to do that kind of stuff. All right, so where do I get these lists? I think we talked about this briefly earlier. And where do I get these lists? I think I've already touched base on that. But really, I think the honest, absolute non-salesman opportunity here to give you the best answer is your best option is to go straight to the source, which is public records, whether that be the courthouse or your county clerks, and camp out there. And that is going to be the absolute freshest way to get it. The second best way is to get with your more advanced counties and see if you can get access to their online records, like their FTP files or wherever they're producing their documents online. So if you're not willing to go to the courthouse itself every single day or every other day, monitor their online records as soon as possible. Because where your national data aggregators and your local data aggregators are likely going to get this information from are from these FTP files coming out of your more advanced county clerk's offices. Beyond that, you can, these national data aggregators come in several different fashions. Propelio itself, on our national foreclosure lists, we do have national data aggregation there. But I'm going to be straight up with you. It's probably a week or two old whenever we're talking about, from the time that a national pre-foreclosure list hits your interface there on Propelio. Now, for the Texas people in your major metro markets, Propelio I do have a team of virtual assistants that scrape county records online. Now, not at the courthouse, online. So we're normally imaged into the online records about 24 hours after it is filed in public record. So normally a Propelio in-state Texas list is about 48 to 72 hours, brought to you within about 48 to 72 hours of it being filed in public record at the courthouses. So I don't know of any other service in the state of Texas that does that faster at scale. So I do feel confident saying Propelio lists in Texas are pretty awesome. If you want to get a list better than a Propelio foreclosure list in the state of Texas, you need to go camp out at the courthouse. And I recommend you do it. I mean, if you don't got a job and you can afford to go sit down at the county courthouse, I don't think you're going to have a better opportunity to take an advantage in this market than being there the moment that list is filed.
And Danielle, there's one other area that you can do, the legal paper. When they're filing the notice of default, they have to post it and it shows up in the legal paper. So if they Google their county or their city and their legal paper, legal review, they can pull up the foreclosure cases that way.
Thank you for bringing that up because I completely forgot about that. Like I know in Missouri, like St. Louis, they have the legal review paper right there that you can subscribe to, and it's just the public notification. Here in Texas, like the public notice for Texas is the document filed at the courthouse. Like they have a specific area right by the front door of the courthouse that is just like 60, 70, 80 foreclosure notices deep. And you just go up there and open it up and you start flipping through the documents. You're not allowed to take it away. You're not allowed to take pictures of it. I don't know why there's like a little guard standing there that's like, no pictures. But you just go there and you see something that gets added to it. You just pop it open. You look at the lot block and you take that lot block real quick and pop open your phone, walk away from the security guard because they don't want you taking pictures, but walk away and then pull that up. So, that's kind of the basics of it. So that is how we do that. Now, how are we going to get in contact with the owner? This goes back into the marketing side of stuff. So let's take a look at the marketing sides of stuff. Okay. This right here is I'm not going to go too deep on the marketing because marketing is a class in and of itself. Like marketing, I could spend a week just talking about marketing and not even really touch the peak of that iceberg. But in my opinion, if you are investing in real estate, you really need to consider yourself a marketer first and an investor second. The biggest piece to being successful in this business is marketing. Like if you know everything you could possibly know about every single acquisition, disposition strategy, everything you could possibly think of, but you are absolutely a dead zero on marketing, you're really going to struggle to implement your knowledge. So the key thing that many people miss out on when they're studying real estate is you really need to be studying marketing equally, if not more so, than the real estate itself, because a solid marketer will develop more opportunity than a solid investor. And that's just facts. So marketing
I love that you say that.
key. Absolutely.
I always call myself a real estate marketer.
There you go. And
I'm not an investor. I'm a marketer. Yeah.
I'm really glad you say that. So for anybody that's out there watching right now, I cannot stress enough that your key to being successful in this business is directly related to your ability to market. Now, there are many different ways of marketing. So you know what? Maybe you're not really good at copywriting. Maybe you're not really good at whatever it is, SEO or pay-per-click or direct mail. But you know what? Maybe you're really good with your charisma. Maybe you got the gift of gab. Maybe you're really socially interactive. Well, guess what? Network marketing is real. You know what? You can establish yourself as a really prominent resource in a community just by running your mouth. So look at whatever resources you have and focus your marketing channels on that. Like if you've got a mentor that keeps telling you, you know what, you need cold call, and you absolutely fall flat on your face on the phone, well, guess what? There's like 900 other marketing channels that you could hit that doesn't involve cold call. Like for me personally, I'm not the best cold caller. Over time, I've warmed up to it. I'm an introvert at heart. I'm not very charismatic. I'm a bit of an a-hole. Most people describe me as that. All that taken into consideration, though, I did refine my copywriting skills relatively good, and my direct mail game was pretty solid. So I was getting a really high return rate on my direct mail, and then once I got a warm lead on the phone, I could close them. So I've got to figure out and tailor my marketing to the strengths that best suit me. What can I do consistently, repetitively, until I close deals? I guarantee you, any marketing strategy that you implement, if you go at it for 3 weeks and this doesn't work, it's not that marketing strategy doesn't work. It's every marketing strategy out there has been proven to work by a successful individual. What didn't work was you. You got to work. This ain't get rich quick.
Yep.
It ain't even get rich easy. And I want to fix that real quick, because I do consider it to be get rich easy. I really do. Because whenever I look at 30 years to retiring into poverty, I don't consider that easy. I don't consider 30 years of working in the labor force just to retire into poverty easy. But I consider 7 to 10 years of concerted effort where I don't give up, where I take all the bumps and bruises to be able to walk out the other side of it with a 7 or 8, 9-figure net worth. I don't see a better plan out there than real estate to do that for you. But you've got to work it. When I say it's simple, but it's not easy, you're going to have to work. So don't go out there and throw 3 weeks of marketing effort at something. This doesn't work. All these people are just out there running their mouth about it. I went from looking at life in prison to a solid 7-figure net worth inside of about 7 years. So I don't know of too many channels or real or asset or investment vehicles that can afford you that type of luxury in that short period of time. So how are we going to market to these people? Let's see here.
You're going to get really good at sales.
Yes.
Sales and marketing is what you really need to get good at.
It really is. It really is. And if you're good at sales and marketing, you can apply those two trades to really just about any business and blow that business up.
You got that.
Man, y'all are going to get me off topic here, but I'm going to touch base on that real quick.
I'm thinking the same thing. I'm like, I could go for hours on this, but it's true, right?
I think it's
real estate is just your tool. That's what I say. Real estate is just your tool, but you need to get really good at sales and marketing, and you can do anything. That's the way I look at it.
I really am glad you said that. I'm glad you used it as you referred to real estate as the tool, because I was about to use a very similar analogy. Like, I consider real estate investing a trade, just like an electrician, just like a CPA, just like a manager. That is your trade. I am a manager. I am a CPA. I am an electrician. I am a real estate investor. That is your trade. Just because you're a real estate investor doesn't mean you're going to get rich. But a lot of people are like, well, that's an electrician. Electricians don't make a lot of money. I can guarantee you, I can show you some solid 9-figure electricians. Why? Because they understood business. I consider business to be the number one build of net worth. Real estate is great, but I consider real estate to be more of a holding of net worth than the creation of net worth. That's where I want to hold my net worth. Guess what? Many people have made a significant amount of money as real estate investors, but the reason they were able to make a significant amount of money as real estate investors is because they applied business principles to their trade. Real estate investing is a trade, and if I apply solid business principles to that trade, I will excel. But if I take those same business principles and apply them to any trade that I already have, then I can excel and make a considerable amount of money. That's why you see plumbers that come into being multimillionaires. Why? Because they started a plumbing company. That's why you'll find CPAs that become multimillionaires. Why? Because they started a CPA firm. You need to understand business principles. Sales, marketing is a key part of business principles, but you understand that and you apply those principles to just about anything, and you can succeed very well. I consider real estate to be very good for newer people. Why? Because it's very easy to leverage.
Easy.
It's extremely easy to leverage. If I want to go get a loan to start an electrical business, you're going to have to likely secure that loan with what? Real estate. If you don't have real estate, you're not going to likely be able to get that loan to start your business. One of the nicest things I consider about real estate is you're starting out with limited assets, limited capital. You can quickly establish that capital and stuff through real estate because of how easy it is to leverage. Okay?
100%, 100%. The other term I use is real estate as my driver to get me to where I need to go.
110%. Like, I use
Sweet.
real estate to leverage up and start building other businesses. So everything taken into consideration. I'm probably boring some people. Any other input on that, or should I skip on? I should probably skip on, huh?
Keep it going. Keep it going.
I love it, guys. I really do. I appreciate all y'all being on here. Like, I hope this is working out for you. At any point in time, feel free to jump in. But I'm trying to keep this conversation rolling. How's everybody out there in the wonderful world of Facebook, social media, YouTube doing? How's everybody over there in Zoom doing? For everybody that is watching, that are participating in this, do remember, follow Chris Monroe, Brady Durr, Taryn Ward, and Leanna Alcock out there on social media. Give them your thank yous for that. If you've seen them posting comments in the social media world, make sure that you're telling them thank you for being a part of this, because I can tell you right now, I would not have the confidence to do this without them. And by them participating in this, it has made me feel much better about being up here, because I feel like I've got some people to relay questions to whenever my ignorance is exposed. All right? Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. All right. So one of the key things I say here is marketer first, investor second. Your success will be determined by your marketing wholeheartedly. I don't think there's any more true statement that can be said than that. But when you do start down this path, if you're not comfortable with this, you need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable about it. Like, you know what? Your investment into your marketing should have an ROI to it. And you need to calculate and manage and maintain that. And I could go on a full long rant just on marketing alone, but it's not, in my opinion, an expense unless you are doing it without a calculated plan involved with it. You put a calculated plan into it, it's an investment. And you need to monitor that investment. You need to see your return on that investment. You need to monitor and alter your investment to get the highest return possible. So it's not just a, hey, I'm going to throw out 1,000 RVMs and make money. No, you need to split test. You need to monitor. You need to constantly work. And those same RVMs might not work in every market. So you need to get very, very in tune with your marketing. And then you need to develop a plan with it and stay consistent. Consistency is, in my opinion, the biggest piece to it. You might be doing your marketing for 2-3 weeks a month and then say, you know what, this doesn't work. Well, you were just 2 weeks away from landing your first $60,000 deal. You have to stay consistent. There's nothing I can say more to it than that. So you're going to need to budget your time and money around, here's some direct ways to go out there and do some marketing. Door knocking. Door knocking isn't really going to cost you any money. You're going to need to get access to some type of list. You're going to need to go out there and drive to the property. So you're going to have time invested. You're going to have some fuel invested, and maybe a little bit of money invested in your list if you paid somebody else to build it for you. But door knocking is relatively inexpensive, but it's high on time. So when I'm looking at marketing, you've really got paid for marketing and free marketing. But free marketing really isn't free. You're just trading your time for effort. On the other one, you're trading money for effort. So you've got to decide, do I have money and do I want to invest that into my marketing? If I don't want to invest that into my marketing, or I don't have money, I must assume that I'm going to have to commit my time. And how much of your time you commit to this is going to probably directly relate to the results that you get out of this. If you don't have any money, you're going to have to door knock. And when I say you're going to have to door knock, that means like every day, Monday through Sunday. It's around the clock. And then what happens when you land that first deal and you're able to cash, $5, $10, $15, $30, $50,000. I've seen this. I've personally been involved with a $300,000 assignment, $300,000 assignment. I've seen within my network a $500,000 assignment. So when this marketing is done, by all means, $500,000 assignments don't come every single day. But you are literally in a field where a $500,000 assignment fee is possible. Not probable, but it's definitely possible. I've personally been involved with a $300,000 assignment, so I know for a fact it can be done. All of those things taken into consideration, though, you need to stay consistent with this. Your average assignment fee is probably going to be somewhere in the range of the low side of $5 to $7 grand to the high side average of around $35,000. You know, depending on who you are, what your particular motivators are, and your skill set. I've heard people say, you know what, my average assignment fee is around 35 grand. And I've had other people say my average assignment fee is around 7 grand. So you can likely say that somewhere in between those two, that knock on the door could likely pose and be a $10,000 paycheck. So think about that when you're like, I've done this for 2 weeks in the hot Texas summers and I'm giving up. You know what? If you give up, that's on you. I can't do anything about your heart. There's a lot of heart in this. There's a lot of bumps. There's a lot of bruises. There's a lot of technicals to this. It took me years and years and years of blood, sweat, and tears to get to this, but it paid off. Blood, sweat, and tears happened at every job. I can tell you what, when I was out there digging ditches, pulling wire, that was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. I got tired of it. You know what?
What they say, Daniel? What they say? You can't teach hustle.
You can't teach hustle. You can't. You can't teach hustle. You can't teach heart. And one of the things that I say behind that is like your why has to be bigger than your fear. If you're letting your fear stop you from this, your why isn't big enough. If you give somebody a big enough why, they'll get this done. Like, and I'm trying to find a gentle way of saying this. It's like if someone's got a gun to your head, I guarantee you you'll be successful at real estate. But there's not going to be anybody that's going to stand there with a gun to your head saying you need to be successful. So you're going to need to figure out on your own side what it is that's motivating you to do this, because there's going to be plenty of times where you're just like, I'm ready to give up, because it does get hard at times. It does get stressful at times. But so does your normal job. And with that being said, guess what? This probably pays better than most people's normal jobs when you get out there and you do it effectively. Okay? So door knocking, cold calling, Craigslist. And when I say Craigslist, online classifieds. I created the slide deck a couple years back before Facebook and OfferUp and all these other ones were out there. Referrals. Referral marketing is solid. Like, you get established in your local community with that network marketing, referrals can be solid for you. Bandit signs, direct mail, digital marketing as in websites, pay-per-click advertising, SEO, those types of things, marketing campaigns online. Skip tracing, cold calling. I don't really know why my pictures aren't showing up on these slides, but, you know, some of the key thoughts I'd have to say to this, and I'm going to rewind the slides back to that, and I'm going to call it a day for the end of the night, and I'll open it up to some questions for the final 10 to 15 minutes. Maybe you can direct some of your questions to the panelists that are up here. But look at this list. I've got on here this list. I have seen a wide array of different people approach this differently. I've got up there 7 different strategies. There's dozens. I'm by no means is this an expansive list. All of this taken into consideration, though, as a new real estate investor, don't go out there and try and do all of this, because you're not going to do all of it effectively. You're actually probably going to do it all relatively poorly. Pick one of them. Pick one of them that you know you can do consistently, because consistency is the most important factor of this, and drill in on it and become an expert at it. Become an expert bandit sign marketer, an expert direct mail marketer, an expert referral marketer, whatever it is. Become an expert at that, and pick the one, not the one that your mentor tells you to do, pick the one that you are most likely to do consistently. Because if I absolutely despise cold calling or I absolutely despise door knocking, I'm not gonna win at it. I'm not. But you know what? If I'm very good at the network marketing side of stuff, that's where I should probably put all of my effort into it. But you now must turn that into a job with clearly defined responsibilities, schedules. It's like, I must talk to 200 new people this week and refer them back to my profession of being able to solve creative real estate problems. Every time I'm in line at Walmart, every time I'm in line somewhere, every time I have an interaction with anybody, or I might need to create that interaction, I must do these 5 or 6 things, track your metrics, and perform on that. I said that long-winded statement to say, pick the one that you are most likely to do consistently. And that is going to be the one you win at. And not until you have successfully done that to a point where you can relatively automate it, outsource it, and manage it, do you start adding other things on. Because you're going to get stuck right up front doing the king of everything, or the jack of all things and the king of nothing, or whatever, however that saying goes. Don't become that person. Pick the one that you can likely do and that you feel like your personality and your budget will work well for, and make that happen. Now, if your budget leaves you down to 3 things you don't like, well, you're going to need to pick of the 3 things you don't like, the one that you like the most, and then find your way of getting good at that. And if that's cold calling, then that's cold calling. Cold calling has proven over the past several years to be a really big win for a lot of investors. But I get a lot of people reaching out to me just saying, I'm scared. And I get that. Well, you've got to figure out how to get over that fear. So I'm going to call that the end of this particular segment. Remember, this is a mini-series. We're going to get deeper in the weeds. We're going to talk about contracting. We're going to talk about negotiations on the contracting. We're going to talk about 12 different ways to stop a foreclosure. We're going to talk about actually getting on the phone with the banks, getting on the phone with them. What am I going to be talking with them on? We're going to be talking about forbearance agreements. We're going to be talking about third-party authorizations. We're going to be talking about all the finer details that you need to know to actually get on the phone with the bank and execute a phone call with them. So this is the introductory piece to the mini-series, and the remainder of it will come over the next 3 classes. So we've got about 15 to 20 minutes here that I'm going to hang out. If the panelists would like to stick around, please do. I hope that y'all were able to get something out of this. I've never done this before, so I would like to open up the questions to the community. And if you'd like to direct that back to some of our panelists, please do. We've got Chris Monroe, Brady Durr, Taryn Ward, and Liana Alcock all on the call with us today. All of them have their own specialties in their own markets that they might be able to chime in on. So if we have questions, it's now time to get them out there, okay? Yay!
That's right, Mr. Jones.
They might use installment contracts. That's another security instrument that are used in other states
What'd you say about contracts?
Land contracts, installment sales contracts.
Okay.
Those are quite popular in judicial states. Some states do follow the judicial foreclosure process, but some states will follow the non-judicial process for foreclosing on land installment sales contracts. So if you're starting into the pre-foreclosure space, it's important to understand, like Daniel talked about, knowing what security instruments your state allows and what that foreclosure model looks like. For example, Florida doesn't make any sense to do land contracts. It's the same time frame for a mortgage. But in Michigan, you might want to use it, but there'll be a redemption process for a land contract in Michigan, but there's not a redemption for a mortgage foreclosure. So there's give and takes in each state. So it's real important, as like you said, to know the security instruments that your state uses and what the process to be foreclosed or get your asset back.
On my side, I have 0 experience with land contracts. So, but I think the key point that you brought up, and I think it's very important for people to realize, is that different types of transactions have different types of outcomes that involve the law. So knowing what they are really does play into your experience as a real estate investor. The better your experience is, okay, this property that's going into foreclosure is a land contract. Well, this or this or this does not come into play. So knowing that is important for your particular state. Do we have any questions that came in?
Yeah. Well, this is Taryn. Daniel, I was going to add to that. One of the things that your people watching can do is they can network with a foreclosure attorney, especially in judicial states. And what I do is I say, listen, I'm in touch with homeowners. I'm marketing to homeowners that are, falling behind on their payments, and I would love to refer them over to an attorney that might be able to help them as a loan modification and so forth. And inside of that conversation, the foreclosure attorney will actually teach me everything I need to know about that area, about the process, because you're going to bring in them business. So that's something that you could do and take on, is to start networking with attorneys in the area to find out what your local laws are. And that's a great way to network with a resource. We always have an attorney. We have like 3 or 4 attorneys that can stop a sale day of and what it costs, and they give us a special price.
I absolutely love that. Great advice from Taryn there. Do we have any questions coming in? I'm going to leave this open for about 10 more minutes. If I don't have a steady flow of questions coming in, I will allow the panelists to kind of fill this void with any of their own statements on our current topic. But overall, this is a live class. For anybody that's out there watching right now on 10:11 p.m. Central Standard Time on, what is this, June? Is it June or July? I think it's June.
Still June.
Yes, it's still June. So if y'all have questions, man, hit us up. Like, we're here to help you out. And for those of you, if nothing else, for those people that are watching, drop some comments on there on some of the key takeaways that you've learned from this.
You did mention this already. They're asking over here on YouTube, when are the next 3 sessions?
We're going to do this every Wednesday night for the next 3 weeks.
Okay.
Does that sound fair?
Sounds fair enough. Let's see here. Door knocking. How are you approaching the owner? The conversation-wise, are you using the 12 to 15 ways to stop the foreclosure and asking for that conversation, presenting them, or giving them a list? I guess there's just extra questions. But basically, what is the conversation when you knock on the door, basically?
All right, so someone's asked, what is the conversation we're going to have when we're knocking on the door? Now, for me, I have a very particular style, and my style, my personality is not going to be yours, so I do need to qualify this with pick your own thing. But on mine, I'm very direct, I'm very straightforward. When I knock on the door, as soon as I answer, I'm just going to go straight to it. I was like, did you know that today your property there was a filing in the public record stating your property was going to foreclosure, and would you like to stop it? And that's just how I open up. I'm very direct with it. And then from right there, they might start hitting some objections. I've already got it taken care of. I've already got this. And then from there, it's just a scramble to get that seller to listen, or that homeowner to listen to you before the door gets slammed. So I'm very direct. I'm very straightforward to it. I'm just like, there was a document filed in public record today stating your property was going into foreclosure. There's 12 different ways that it could be stopped. Would you be interested in stopping it? And boom, I'll just stop right there. And, I'll let the seller hit me back, or the homeowner hit me back with whatever it's often a rebuttal. It's like, I've already got it taken care of. Don't worry about it. And you go to slam the door, and I'll be like, I don't know what your plans were for taking care of it, but there are a lot of options out there that are free to cost you nothing that can be done. And while you are exploring one option, more often than not, that one option does not always pan out, and you do not want to end up in it. And I just go for a scramble to keep that door open. I mean, I start just doing whatever I have to do to keep that door going because I need to keep that person talking. Most people are not prone to just slamming the door on your face if you're talking. They'll want to, but they won't. Most people. Now, there's definitely times where it gets a little hairy, but for the most part, people are receptive. They're most often embarrassed. You have to understand that embarrassed part of it. They don't really like their information being out there in public. So you got to overcome the embarrassment aspect of it, and then you've really got to help in a very short period of time bring that seller from the realization to there is a full-blown stranger at my front door saying that they can help me out here. I don't know who this is. They're all up in my personal business. There's a lot of objections you got to get through really fast when you're door knocking. But my personal take on it is most people are immediately coming to the door with the I've already got it solved issue. But if you're able to keep that door open long enough, you quickly find out that their resolution really isn't one. They just don't want to talk to you. But once you've pulled that conversation through, it opens up. Does anybody else on the panel have different experiences with this?
Yeah, so when I go in, because I'm in judicial and it's a longer process, I always go in with how I can help them save their house. Like, they have options, how they try the loan modification and things like that. By coming from that space, they're already not motivated. I know that they're probably already trying to do a loan modification and so forth, that I gain their trust. And so then it's a follow-up sequence, okay. Yeah, so it's a follow-up sequence that spaces out, and I let them know, listen, if there's any update, I'll let you know. I'll bring them the court documents. And so I build the relationship over time because I know that it's going to take, a year. If I'm reaching out to a homeowner that's already got a sale date, even if they have a sale date, they know they can postpone it, right? Okay. So if I come in really hard and say to them, hey, you're going to lose your house next week, what are you going to do about it? All the guards go up. So by letting them know, and I often ask the question like, hey, listen, if you could wave a wand right now, what would be your best result that would happen? And that will let me know, are they emotionally attached to the house, they want to keep it, or they just want to be done with it, and they just don't know how to get out of it. So I'm always looking to problem solve with what they're looking to get.
I love that. That's exactly how I do it. I go at them as, how can I help them?
Let me recap that real quick because I'm getting a lot of people from Facebook and YouTube saying that the audio on the Zoom call is not coming over to them. So let me recap what was just said by Taryn and then resonated by Liana. on these judicial states, these homeowners are often aware that they're not in a pending sale anytime soon. I come from a deed of trust state where these homeowners are very much aware their home's gone in like 3 weeks. So I do take a different approach, and it's a lot more direct. And my style overall has always been fairly direct. I'm very straightforward, go straight to the problem. But they brought up a very good point. Like on these in these judicial states, these owners know that they're likely going to be able to get their sale date postponed, and they've got some time to get this figured out. So they take a very different approach, and they come at it with the, hey, if I was to be able to help you move through this process, get your home taken care of in whatever fashion it was, if I waved a magic wand for you, what would be the best outcome that you could possibly see from this home? And by asking that question, they can find out what would be like, well, if I could turn around and walk away, sell it, and get a little bit of equity out of it, that'd be great. Or if I could just get another 6 months here, that would be great. Or if I could stay in this home for the rest of my life, that's what I'd want. Well, by opening that probing question, they're able to figure out what the motivation of the seller is, what the intent of the seller is, and then tailor the conversation moving forward with them from there. So it was really cool to see the outtake from somebody that's in a different state on how they manage and handle that conversation in a judicial state. Is that fair? Did I recap that okay?
You did a great job, Daniel.
Hey, I need constant validation. I have zero self-esteem.
I think it's all about just building relationships in any sort of sales conversation, right? You're building that relationship, and I make it so I'm the one that they'll remember to come and call, right?
Right.
Like that's how I do it. So
I love the rapport building process. I've clearly been saying.
So do I.
Yeah, I've been saying for a long time that rapport buys more houses than money ever will, and I still hold strong to believing that that's the truth. So
does that what you all was just saying, does that go for a phone call as well? If you're speaking to somebody, if you just call somebody you know is on a pre-foreclosure list,
Mm-hmm.
give them that same type of conversation, or would you go
Totally.
bullish and say, "Hey, I know you're on the list. I want to buy a house."
I don't usually because I obviously do everything virtually. I a lot of times don't even tell them that I know they're in foreclosure. I let them tell me. So I'm asking those types of questions that they're going to start to tell me what the problems is and what their pain points are. So that's how I personally do it. But that's just again about figuring out kind of what their motivation is, what their pain is, and just asking the right questions, right?
Exactly. Like if they if I call somebody and say, "Yeah, I want to know if you're interested in selling your house." No, I don't want to sell it. Then I'll hit them with, "Hey, did you take care of everything with the bank, or what's going on there?" And then they say, "Oh yeah, my cousin gonna give me the money or some other stuff." But I got them at that point. If they play that game, then I'll pull that card. I never pull it out of the first hand.
Yeah, I always find too a lot of people that are in foreclosure kind of what I always say is they put their head in the sand and they don't think the bank's not going to take my house, nothing's going to happen, so they just don't want to talk to you until they get a little bit further inside the process, and then it's like, oh shit, it's going to happen. Oops, sorry. Oh god, this is going to happen, and then sometimes. And I swear 80% of the time it's too late by that time. Sometimes we just can't do anything. So
they won't call me the day before the auction. Yeah, I want to sell.
Yeah.
I called you weeks ago. What you doing?
Right? Called you 6 months ago.
For those that have not been on this foreclosure process for long, you will have those ostriches, and I call them ostriches that just bury their head in the sand until the very last second. You'll have people call you up the day before the auction being like, "Hey, I want to sell my house." And I'm not going to sit here and say it's not possible, because it 110% is, but you better be ready to jump through hoops to make it happen, because it's going to take a lot of effort in a short period of time to get that foreclosure stock in that time frame. So, you need to do a lot of pre-qualifying questions, get a lot of stuff taken care of up front, but I have bought properties inside of 10 to 12 hours when I couldn't get a bank to postpone, and I've done it. It had risks involved with it, but the rewards outweighed my risks. So it gets tough at times.
Yeah, I did have a question too, a personal question, not really personal, but a question I had. I was dealing with a pre-foreclosure, and I think it had an FHA loan, and they were saying that, it's going to take us 2 weeks to give you the payoff, and they were delaying it. It's like they were really trying to take the house, but I know you said earlier they don't really want the house, but something seemed fishy about this deal, like they was trying to stretch it out to not give us a payoff and not work with the title company or me or anybody, and they really play games. I mean, have you seen stuff like that in your experience? Anybody here?
So yes, and here I think Taryn's got some questions or some answers involved with that too. But in the state of Texas, the Texas Finance Code states that any creditor in the state of Texas that provides a loan must give you a payoff in 7 days. A written payoff has to be given in 7 days. So if a bank does try and do something like that with me, I will pull the law up. I'll have an attorney throw a demand letter up. But in addition to that, I'll take a separate route, and I will oftentimes work with the seller to get them to log into their online banking platform. And oftentimes when I'm on their online banking platform, I can get a payoff oftentimes right then and there immediately, if not within 24 hours. So I'll either go the attorney route with the state law that says 7 days it has to be done, or I will go through and do the online platform. And oftentimes with the online platform and if I've got like a pending sale that's like having to get done and done fast, I will oftentimes use the online payoff system to get at least a general ballpark idea of what's going on, then use an abstracted title to find out if there's any other liens on record. And oftentimes I'll just take the property over subject to right there in that final hour just to take ownership of the property, and then I'll figure out the details after that. But there are risks involved with that. So, Taryn, looked like you had something else you wanted to throw in on top of that?
Yeah, I was going to say the banks definitely can drag their feet. We don't have, I don't know of any stipulations in my area or the areas that I've worked in regarding the payoffs, but they will drag it out. And there's a lot of different reasons. Sometimes they've got private mortgage insurance on the property, and they'll actually make more money if they take the property back. And things like that. So there's some really strange things that go on in the back. And then you got to remember that the person at the bank that's working the foreclosure side is not the guys that work the payoff side. Like, they don't talk to each other. So you sometimes see the lack of communication on that, and that will drag out the time. So I've seen it in different situations. I make up my own stories why it happens, right? But yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, they definitely dragged their feet on this thing because he owed about $70,000 and the ARV was like $140, and it didn't need really anything, cleaning up and stuff, nothing major. And I'm like, I think they're trying to take this man's house, and so they already did a drive-by inspection, and they said it was worth $90 as is from their drive-by. So I mean, I think they really tried to take that man's house, and they did it.
So
Yeah,
it's possible, because the other thing is that when you find that there's a lot of equity in the property is generally when they're dragging their feet. If it's underwater, they move quickly because they don't want the property back. But if it's got a lot of equity, they'll drag it.
Yeah, and I find a lot of the bigger banks will have servicers that are dealing with their loans, so they don't even know what's going on with the property. Like, they're just somebody in a call center working a file, right? So, yeah, and you get told different things quite often from different people that you're calling. So sometimes it takes a little bit to
I'm glad you said
to
that.
get the right answers.
I'm glad you said that, because we would have brought that up in the future of the class. What I've found a lot of times when I'm dealing with the bank, if I've got on the phone with somebody that I'm not really playing ball with me, I'll just hang up and just call right back.
Yeah.
And I'll try and get somebody else on the phone, and I'll just keep going through that. There are some banks where you're going to get shifted back to a certain department. There's only like 5 or 6 people in there, but other banks, like if I'm just getting on the phone with an operator that's just not getting me anywhere, I'll just cut bait and just call right back and see if I can get a different operator, and I'll just start the whole process over again with asking the exact same questions, because different operators deal with me differently.
Yeah, I agree. I do the exact same thing. I mean, the first thing I do in a foreclosure is see if I can buy the note right off the bat. That's what I do, because I'd rather be the lender, right? I'm at the top of the food chain if I own the note, right?
Right.
So that's my first. Yeah, that's my first way of combating them. But you can only do that if you're dealing with the little tiny banks like credit unions and stuff.
That's what I've been finding on my side too. Is the credit unions, the smaller regional banks, are more apt to get you on the phone with the vice president of the bank or something like that.
Yeah.
And the vice president of the bank's always like, "Yeah, I'll sell you the note. This is what it's at." And then boom, you can take control of the asset just like that. So
yeah, 100%. I have like a couple in Baltimore that I have like direct lines to and phone them and emails. Some like some of this, so it's awesome.
All right. Any other questions coming in, or are we gonna? I'm gonna wrap this up. I'm gonna take 2 more questions, and I'm wrapping this up. Chris, you get to be the holder of the keys, man. Who are gonna do the next 2 questions be?
All right, that's like somebody's got a Well, somebody said they chimed in late. Did you all cover already how to tell if your estate is judicial versus non-judicial? I know you did, but
We did cover that, but nolo.com, and then I believe that Taryn dropped some stuff in there on the Zoom chat for Realty Track. So if you're not on the Zoom chat, go out and check out Realty Track and just search Realty Track foreclosure laws, and you'll likely find a quick guideline to it. Or if you just Google search judicial versus non-judicial foreclosure, you will often find a very simplified list of states that move through those different processes. Do remember that some states do run both processes, just like in the state of Texas. Most people do not realize it. While 99.999% of our foreclosures are non-judicial, home equity loans or home equity lines of credit in the state of Texas are judicial foreclosures.
I was gonna say that too, because Maryland will run both. They'll run both. So you just have to. They have mortgages and they have deeds of trust. So you just have to pay attention.
There's a lot of states that run both, but the overall majority of them will likely be handled in one fashion.
Yeah, the majority in Maryland that I know of is judicial. But.
Fun stuff. So
all right, one more here you got from Alex Reed over on YouTube says, do you still market on the first notice of appointment of substitution trustee since the owner is less than your ideal 120-day since notice of default?
Okay, so I'm gonna repeat that here and make sure I heard this right. Alex Reed over there on YouTube was asking, if I'm marketing to the appointments of substitute trustee, am I more apt to working with those than the 120-day late? I'm not 100% sure I understood the question, but let me recap a few things real quick. The appointments of substitute trustees are not regulated documents, as in there is no part of the state's required due process that includes an appointment of substitute trustee. So an appointment of substitute trustee can be filed completely outside of a delinquency. It doesn't have to be a delinquent property, but in the terms of it being a delinquent property, that could be filed at 30 days late. That could be filed at 90 days late. That could be filed the day of the auction. That could be filed the day of the notice of trustee sale. There is no laws regarding the appointment notice of substitute trustee, the appointments of substitute trustee documents. So that could be filed at any point in time of default or a property that's not even in default. So what I've personally found is that you're often going to find that the initial appointment of substitute trustee will be filed before the notice of trustee sale. I find that to be the document that I want more so than any other document outside of probably a 120-day late credit bureau list. I will market to the 120, 150, 180-day lates religiously, and then I'll also monitor that and scrub that against the notice of trustee or appointment of substitute trustee sale, just to see where they're going at in the foreclosure process. I don't know if I answered this question, but overall, in my opinion, the grand scale tier of quality leads, I'd say the credit bureau lists from that starting at the 120-day mark are the best leads that I've dealt with, and then moving forward from there, the appointments of substitute trustee, and then the final one being the notice of trustee sale. So if I had lists to go after, those are the lists I'd go after, and in that order.
Look like you covered it.
All right. Well, do the four of y'all have any final thoughts that y'all would like to add in onto this panel? Some closing statements, anything that these people might be able to do to benefit y'all or work with y'all or follow y'all? It sounds like there's a lot of knowledge here on the panel, and if anybody wants to follow these people, feel free to do so. I do have to make a blanket statement because I've gotten myself in trouble here in the past couple of years of having people on. I have not done any due diligence on these four people. I consider all of them to be respectful people, but I've not worked with them. This isn't me giving my go work with these people vote. Now, I have to say that, man, because I've worked with some people on here in the past, and it turned out that they weren't doing things the way that they really should have been doing things. And I hate that I have to say this, but these were people that were kind enough to come in here, provide their time, and provide value to you. So if you enjoyed the value you got out of them, let's hear what they got to say real quick. Chris, what you got to say?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks, Danny, for having me on here on the panel. Thanks for all the viewers out here. You can follow me on all social media outlets at Chris Monroe STL. That's Snapchat, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, you name it. Easy to find all over the world. And you don't have to worry about nothing bad off of me because my receipts speak for themselves. All we do is bring successful to the table. That's all we do.
Much love, man. So thank you for being on here, man. I've been watching you follow Propelio for quite a long time. You've always been a supporter. Much love, man. Thank you for that. Brady, Is there anything that the community can do to help you? How can you work with the community? Is there anything you got to like to add to that conversation?
Well, I've just come up quite a few wholesalers in the area that they might have deals that they can't across the table with their cash buyers. I love that kind of stuff. So if you got a deal that's in your pipeline and it's just not working out to get your cash buyer, maybe there's an option for some creative financing, but you might not know how to have that conversation with them. Let's talk. Maybe if there's something we can do to get that deal, that lead across the table, some money back in your pocket so you can refill up your marketing budget.
So how do they reach out to you? Can they find you on social media, or do you have an email or something like that these wholesalers can reach out to you for?
Oh, yeah.
If they have some low equity deals.
I'm always in the Propelio section trying to help people answer questions. My email is bradycdur@gmail. bradycdur@gmail. Like
Brady, and DRR@gmail.com. I'm happy to repeat what you're saying because I'm not 100% positive that people on Facebook and stuff are able to see that. And for everybody that is watching, I'll have these technical issues fixed before the next class. So I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no worries. And Brady at Mortgage Medic is my firm, mortgagemedicusa.com. I've got a website. Start off with non-performing notes. But Brady at Mortgage Medic USA is another email. I can reach me that way as well.
Awesome, man. Thank you for being on the panel today. And Taryn, your turn.
Yeah, Daniel, thanks so much for having me. You guys can find me on Facebook. I have Women Wholesaling Houses Facebook group. If you're a woman, we'd love to have you. If you're a man, you're not allowed in. Otherwise, you can just find me on Facebook Messenger with Taryn Ward. I'm in most of the wholesaling groups. And I do a lot of short sales across the country. I deal with pre-foreclosures and things like that, and I love to help new investors out through the process to teach them how to learn and to be able to help more homeowners get out of the situation and avoid that foreclosure. So that's a little bit about me. Thanks very much for having me, Daniel.
Thank you very much for committing your time to this and giving back to the community. I appreciate all of y'all on the panel for providing your insight. The last but not least on the panel we have up here, Leanna Alcock. Is there anything that you would like to say to the community, or if the community would like to follow you, how they can reach out and communicate and work with you?
Yeah, for sure. Just thank you for inviting me. Sorry about my little daughter here.
I got two of them.
Because I feel that I'm probably the least experienced on this panel, but it's been great. And I do have a Facebook group called Real Life Real Estate, so you can come there. You can message me on Facebook. Yeah, that's about it. I appreciate your guys' time.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Well, I appreciate it, Leanna. I appreciate it, Taryn, Brady, Chris. All of y'all have definitely added some value to this group today. I want to say one last thing to everybody that's out there watching right now. This was produced and brought to you by Propelio.com. For anybody that has never heard of Propelio.com, it is a online software system that allows you to gain access to nationwide lead lists covering things like absentee owners, high equity, low equity, vacant, cash buyers, private lenders, your typical list building type of stuff, 144 million property records across the United States. But in addition to that, you get access to nationwide MLS comps, as well as we provide you with websites for your business, WordPress-based websites that are turnkey. You don't have to have any technical experience at all to get yourself a nice website for your business. So if the sellers out there trying to research you, they can find you online with your website and get you access to professional emails such as Daniel at ibuyhouses.com versus ibuyhouses@gmail.com. It will allow you to add an extra layer of credibility to your business. And then further and above and beyond that, we also provide a mobile app for driving for dollars that will allow you to send postcards, allow you to do direct mail and other things like that. So if you have needs for property lists, MLS comps, websites for your business, or a mobile driving for dollars app, we can provide all of that to you under one package, one low cost of $98 a month. And we do have a 14-day free trial, no credit card required. So it's not like I forgot to cancel my account, I got charged type of stuff. No, go sign up with an email, 14-day free trial, check it out. And none other than Propelio.com/academy is available to you as a free resource to up your knowledge on real estate investing. So for those of you that did take the time out of your Wednesday evening to come in here and check this out, I want to say thank you for committing to yourself and committing to your business. And we will follow this up next Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time to go into the next part of this foreclosure training. Thank you all. Thank you to all the panelists. Everybody out there, make sure you show these panelists some love. We got Chris Monroe, Liana Alcock, Taryn Ward, and Brady Durr. Make sure that you show them some love. Show us some likes, some hearts, some shares. And I'll see y'all next Wednesday, 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. Same place, same location, same bat time. All y'all cats and kittens, have a good evening. See ya.
Booyah!
See ya. All right, guys, let's have a good one. See ya. All right, mics are off, and we're shutting everything down. Thank you, guys. Thank you to each and every one of y'all. If I could do anything better this
Nice
next
pose,
time
Brady.
around, let me know. But,
Thanks, guys. Have a
thank
good one.
all right.
You all too. Peace.
Bye. See you, Brady. Let me see what I'm doing here. Hold on. I'm trying to figure out.
It's been a long time.
I'm figuring this out. I promise you, I'll figure this out. There we go. I had to find my mouse. Like, I got 9 monitors in my immediate view. So trying to find my mouse can be difficult at times.